Terminal log. You start the recorder. Double check it's actually recording. All right. Okay, so this is cisp310, and I hope you guys are ready for the class. So what we'll do today is I'll talk about the homework assignment, because the homework assignment itself may take some explanation. Okay, so you might need to kind of pay attention, because if you have any questions about it, today is a good day to ask. Then we'll talk about the next homework assignment, just a little bit of it. Binary subtraction used to be just a topic where I talked about the whole thing. I don't want to do that because I want you guys to work on it, because that way you can actually appreciate the whole process of turning an arithmetic operation into gate logic operation. Then you can specify the gate logic to actually do the computation. Okay? And that's that's computer engineering. Okay, if anyone wants to get into computer engineering, that's basically what you do. Okay, you have some sort of thing that you want to do. How do you specify that in gate logic? All right, so we'll go ahead and get started with a 3-bit speedy adder. Okay, this is your homework assignment. I just typed this up, like yesterday or the day before. So there's not a whole lot about how it is set up. The only thing is when you save the file, I think typo, gotta fix that first, because otherwise I'll have a whole bunch of people turning in using the wrong file name, which may not be a bad thing, but then there will be some people turning in with the wrong file name and some will turn in the right file name, so I'm gonna fix that. CIRC, circuit, there we go. Okay. So the file name of your submission has to be 3x3 adder with an uppercase A and the extension of CIRC. Okay, because what I do is I have a script. I download all the submissions of this class as one single zip file, and unzip everything. It will come up with as individual files. Then I have a script to look through all the files and just kind of pop up the whole thing in LogicZip. It will still be graded manually. Okay, but the opening of the file is automatic. So it's definitely legal in California because it is semi-automatic. Yeah, but the class size is a little more than 10, so I'm not sure about that part.
Are we recording?
Yes. Okay, so here is the interface. So the interface of this particular design need to have exactly 6 input pins. Exactly 3 pins will represent 3 bits of a number x, and 3 of those pins will represent 3 bits of a number y. Okay, and those have to be labeled as x0, x1, x2 for the 3 bits of the number x, y0, y1, y2 for the number y, where x0 is the least significant bit, same thing with y0, and then x2, y2 are the most significant bits. Are there any questions about this particular portion? The inputs.
So will be 3 bits plus 3 bits?
Those are the inputs.
Yeah, those
okay? Because the end result is a 3-bit by 3-bit adder, right? So I'm adding a 3-bit number to with another 3-bit number, and that's why we have 6 input pins. Okay, 4 outputs. So the output is specified in the next paragraph. There are 4 output pins. We have Z0 being the sum, the least significant bit. Yeah, so we have Z0 being the least significant bit of the sum, Z1, Z2, and Z2 being the most significant bit of the sum. And then we have the leftover dangling, carry bit as C. Now, this is not coincidental, okay? I choose to have a 3-bit by 3-bit adder because when we talked about, binary adding, which example did I use? 3-bit by 3-bit adder. Okay, so that means I have done some of the groundwork for you already. It's just that you have to finish up, the rest and turn it into an actual gate design. Are we doing okay so far with just the interface part? 6 inputs, 4 outputs. Yep.
Did you just say that you had the row table in the binary adding reading? I didn't catch what you just asked. What you said just a second ago.
In the reading about binary adding, I use a 3-bit by 3-bit adder as an example. So you can basically, so it translates almost directly into the starting point of this homework assignment.
Okay.
So definitely, review the reading material if you need to, because it is directly related to this homework assignment. When you use the gate, this is the part where you really have to pay attention. The input and output, it makes sense, okay? But the gate use restriction may not be as straightforward. In this particular design, you can only use AND gates and OR gates, okay? But you can use the bubbles, okay? You can use the bubbles to the input of those gates to negate an input. All right?
You mean to say that we can't use NOT, or we in effect use?
I don't want you to use the specific NOT gate because then it gets really tedious. So I'm trying to save you from tedium by saying, okay, just use the bubbles.
I have one question.
Yeah.
Like, that is the part that I don't understand is the input to negate. So like, does that cancel that number? Or is
No. It just turns a 1 into a 0, a 0 into a 1.
Oh, okay.
It's just like having a NOT gate, except it is a part of the input of the disjunction or the input of the conjunction.
So it hits that and it changes the.
That's why you need to go to the lab session, because I demonstrated that in the previous lab session. It is recorded, it's online.
Oh, okay.
Yes. Yep.
Where are those recording?
On YouTube. Look under my channel name, which is Sonprofs, SONEPROFS, and then go to the video tab. It is listed in a reversed chronological order. All right. So this part is really just the restrictions because I don't want anyone to use the built-in 3-bit by 3-bit adder in Logic Sim. Because then you just slap one component in and you're all done. That's not what I want you to do. I want you to actually do this part the long way, okay? Now, the next part, structural restriction, is even more confusing. Okay, I can actually expand this to fill the entire screen, more or less. Okay, that will fill up the entire screen. There we go, much better. Okay, so structural restriction is even more important because what it says is each output pin can only be 2 gates from input pins that it relies on. Okay, so I'm going to give you a picture that has probably nothing to do with the actual homework assignment. Output pins are circular. Okay, so it has to be coming out of a particular gate, and I can give you a hint already. It's probably an OR gate. Okay, so this is going to come out of an OR gate, and the OR gate looks like this. There's no particular restriction of how many inputs this OR gate can take. Okay, the default is 5. You can turn it up. You can crank it all the way up. I don't think it will exceed 6. Okay, but you can crank it up to as many input pins as you need. Okay, so I'm just going to use this as an example. Maybe just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. Each one of these is coming in probably through an AND gate of some kind. So those are AND gates. And the input to the AND gates can be negated. Okay, some of those can be negated, some of those may not need to be negated. If you want to negate, put a bubble here. Okay, so some of these can be negated, some are not negated. And then on the other side, you have the 6 input pins, right? Input pins are squared. 4, 5, 6. So now, here comes the fun part. The fun part is one input pin can go here, can go here, can go here, go here, and here. The next input pin, same thing. Go here, 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 and so on. So your picture, just to specify one of the 4 output pin, is going to look something like this. So the restriction of the structural restriction basically says you can only have 2 layers of gates. This is one layer. This is another layer. Yeah, go ahead.
So like, we can't start with like one gate over here and have that feeding into that gate and have it feed into that gate.
If you count the number of gates connecting from the input pin to the output pin, that count cannot exceed 2.
So like, it's like rows, right?
So I can give you an example where it doesn't work. Okay, so let's say you have these two going into an AND gate. The output of this AND gate goes into another AND gate, and then the output of this is going through an OR gate, and one of these pins also feeds to the OR gate. That would not be the requirement, because when you look at the output of this OR gate, when you look at this output pin, it is 1, 2, 3 gate levels from this pin.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
So it's like the whole function thing where if you only have one input, you only have one output.
Sorry?
Like the whole function room where like if you only have one input, you can only have one output. Or you kind of lost me.
You can only have, okay, each gate has a propagational delay. Okay, in order for the input pins to affect the output pin, there's a certain delay. I want the minimal delay from input to output.
Time-wise?
Time-wise.
Oh.
So the best you can do is 2 layers with some of the pins. With some of the pins you can do it with 1 layer, but most of the pins you will need 2 layers. Okay, so I'm just saying that 2 layer is the maximum. You cannot exceed 2 gate propagation from the input to the output. Now, each pin can be connected to multiple inputs. I mean, one input pin can connect to the input of multiple gates. That's not a restriction, that's okay. Each gate can have any number of input pins. That is not a restriction. The restriction is you can only use AND gates or gates. And you can only have up to 2 layers of gates between the input pins and the output pins.
Okay, so it's gonna take time, right? Like for each layer to add more
Exactly.
time. Okay.
Yep, and I want this to be done as quickly as possible.
Also, it's called speedy. That's what it's called, speedy.
That's why it's called speedy, yes, because there's a slow way to do this, which I do in all previous classes. But this semester, I decided, hey, I want to do what Intel does. I want to push my employees to give me the best and most efficient design. So that's what you guys are doing.
And pay you or what? You're gonna pay us?
But that depends on the grade. Intel doesn't pay anyone who doesn't get a job done right? Has anyone even tried to apply to work for Intel, or know anyone who applies to work for Intel?
I have 2 friends that work there as, I think they're solid state testers.
Okay.
Solid states.
But Intel doesn't hire directly.
No, it's through Kelly Services.
Yep, they always contract to someone to hire their employees. Yep.
But they work there though, so
Yep.
they don't props.
It's difficult to get in, but once you get in, they really work you hard too. So you have to like what you're doing if you plan to work for Intel. All right, so if that is not clear, then I'm going to use the word disjunctive normal form to help explain that. So let's see if I can do this as a new tab. And open a new tab here. Oh, there we go. So a disjunctive normal form is it looks like this. Okay, this is the formal grammar of DNF, or disjunctive normal form. Okay. So it means, what it means is literal becomes a variable. Literal can become the other way around. A variable can be a literal. The negation of a variable can be a literal. In your case, the variables are the input pins. Okay. Then you can have conjunctions. The conjunction can be just a literal all by itself. Can also be the actual conjunction of a literal with another conjunct. And this means it can basically chain. And then the disjunct can be a conjunct all by itself. Can also be a whole bunch of conjunctions connected by the disjunction operator. Okay, it's best to illustrate what is an example. This is in DNF, because you basically see that we have either variables. A is a variable, E is a variable, F is a variable, or the inverted form of a variable. So we have not B being a negation of a variable, not C being the inverted form of a variable. And then we have parentheses surrounding what we call the clause. Okay, that's what we call the clause. And the parentheses are always surrounding conjunctions. Okay? And then the result of the conjunctions will be the final operator is the disjunction. Is that okay? Does that remind you of something that you're seeing on the whiteboard?
Yeah.
Okay, very good. I mean, disjunction, bunch of conjunctions, possibly negations, and then all your input pins are considered variables.
Disjunction, conjunction.
This is a disjunction, these are conjunctions. There's an OR gate, those are AND gates. Okay? So what you need to do is to turn every single formula in the binary add reading material into this form. Okay? Then you can just, then it's just a matter of inputting this in logic sync. That's the very last step. Are there any questions about what you need to do for the homework assignment? Not necessarily how, I will continue to talk about how, but just what you're supposed to do.
Our scratch work. You want that as well or no?
Scratch work, there's no place to really turn in the scratch work, so you can kind of just not turn it. All right. So are there any questions about what is a DNF, what is disjunctive normal form, and how it relates to your homework assignment? No questions?
Could you give us another example of writing one of the things that we saw in the binary reading into DNF?
We can certainly do that. But the there's one more thing I need to display here. So let me just finish that part first, and then we'll talk about the example. So I'm gonna display this so I can actually display the formula, because otherwise you just look at $sign something. Okay, so there we go. This is the only thing you really need to know is the distributive law of Boolean algebra. A or B in parentheses and C is the same thing as A and C or B and C. Okay? That's the only thing you need to apply, because the way things are working out based on the R and the C functions is basically that's the thing you need to do. Okay? You just have to distribute stuff so that eventually everything becomes DNF. If you find a need to do this, I don't think you need it, okay? But if you do find a need to do this, A or B, and then the whole thing negated, is not A and not B. That's called De Morgan's law. But De Morgan's law works the other way as well, which means the negation of A and B is the same thing as not A or not B. Okay, so in case you encounter situations like that, you can also use De Morgan's law. Okay, now that I have described, for the most part, what the homework is, I'll just go ahead and finish up how I'm going to grade it. A design like this has 2 to the power of 6 or 64 possible test cases. How did I come up with 2 to the power of 6? There are 6 input pins, and all 6 input pins are independent. So that's why I have 2 to the power of 6 possible test cases. Am I going to use all 64 to grade this homework assignment? The answer is no, until I find a script to do it. But if I cannot use a script to do it, I'm just going to use some representative test cases to test your design. But in order for your design to get credit at all, you have to meet all the specifications, which means the interface has to meet the requirements that I stated earlier. The use of gates, only using the AND gate and the OR gate, okay? No exclusive OR, okay? No, no adder, by itself, stuff like that. And then structurally speaking, you can only have up to 2 layers of gate, okay? Now each layer can have a massive number of fan out. That's okay. I don't, care about how much you fan out the gates. It's just the level have to be limited to 2. Are there any questions about that? No questions? All right. So now let's talk about multiplication. I'm just kidding. We'll go back to binary adding because I want to show you how to get started with this one. Ah, it's better, 61. I think last time I checked it was only about 40 something. All right, so what I'll do is I'm going to give you one example. And guess what? I'm right on the page that I need. All right, so this turns out to be one of the, well, I think it's one of the internal bits, but I can double check. Let me just check this. Go back to the previous slide, because I want to show you one of the pins, just so that you know what I mean by all that stuff. Okay. So I go to the full equations. Okay. Now this is basically, the whole thing, because I'm giving you all the equations. You don't have to give me the carry bits except for the very last one, which is also the nastiest one. Okay, so I'm not sure whether I'm saving you any work, because you don't have to do this. Okay. You don't have to do this either, but guess what? You have to do this one. Okay, so what I'll do is I'm going to use one thing as an example. I'm just trying to find one. Okay, I'm going to use this one as an example. Okay, I can safely use this as an example without worrying that I'm actually doing your homework assignment, because this is internal to the entire adder design, and you won't actually need this. Okay? But I'm going to use this as an example. So if I want the carry to bit 2 as one of the output pins, which I don't, okay, that's not a part of the homework assignment. Let's see how we can do this. Okay, this is the equation. The equation, or not the equation, this is the formula. The formula is based on the structure of the adder. Okay? Can someone tell me why this carry bit is like this? What is the CBE thing? Okay, I'm just going to point to each one and you tell me why it is here. What is this? That's the carry of adding B and E, which are the bits from the less significant column. Because that's one chance to make a carry to this column, right? And here's the OR operator, a disjunction. And then what is this part here? What is it representing? This is the carry, because we know it's a carry because of this C. But it's the carry of adding which 2 bits? The result of B and E, which is this one here, and the carry of the previous column. Okay? Because that addition can also yield a carry to this column.
So that CCF, that's carried from the first bit.
Yes.
So like it hops over and then.
But you don't want to make a connection, because if you do it that way, you will end up with more than 2 layers of gates. Okay? So you want to focus on just this formula all by itself. Okay? Do not even try to say, okay, I can come up with the gates for this one, the output of this bunch of gates go into here. That's not what I want you to do, because that's carry ripple, okay, which is the slow way of doing it. I want you to do it the speedy way, which means I don't want rippling whatsoever. I want everything to be computed with only 2 levels of gate propagation. Okay, so now we look at that equation. Okay, so I'll just focus on one. I look at this one. I just copy and paste it into my notepad here. Okay, there we go. All right. The first thing you want to do is to say, okay, what is C and what is R? What is all that stuff? Well, we talked about that already, right? Because C is the same thing as a conjunction. Because we find that in Boolean algebra, a conjunction is going to do exactly the same thing as what we want to do to compute the carry of adding 2 bits, right? So that means I can do some expansion here. I'm going to use the shorthand notation of electrical engineering. So B times E means the conjunction of B and E. Okay. Plus is disjunction. So I'm just using this because I just like this notation. So the other part, which is the right-hand side, is the conjunction of RBE and CCF. Okay, fine. I'm just going to stick it here without expanding those first. Okay, so there we go. We have C, CF. Are there any questions about how I got from the line? Okay, let me
look up the lines here. So are there any questions about how I got from line 21 to line 22? It's because of the definition of carry.
So it's carry, that's a conjunction.
It's a conjunction because conjunction as a Boolean function turns out to do exactly what we want to do to compute the carry of adding two bits.
So it brings them together.
Huh?
Bring them together.
Sorry?
Yeah, bring them together, like they add 0 to 1 or 1 to 0.
It doesn't matter. If B is 1, E is 1, then we have a carry of 1. If one of them is not a 1, then we don't have a carry of 1. That's the whole point. That's from the previous lecture. Is that okay?
Yeah.
All right. So the next line is going to expand RBE and CCF. Okay, so BE plus. Okay, what is RBE? The result of adding B and E, which is kind of like the half adding thing. 0 plus 0 is 0, 0 plus 1 is 1, 1 plus 0 is 1, 1 plus 1 is a 0. Remember that? It's also known as exclusive OR, but since I said do not use exclusive OR, you have to turn that into negation, conjunction, and disjunction, right? So we kind of talked about that last time too. So that exclusive OR thing is basically a conjunction plus another conjunction. So I'm going to do the CF on the other side, that's the easy one. Okay, so it's B, negation E, and then negation BE. The exclamation point is negation. I'm just borrowing that from C and C++. Okay, so are there any questions? Up to here, it is just expanding the functions C and R. Does this meet the requirement of a DNF, a disjunctive normal form? It doesn't meet that requirement. BE is okay, it's a component of the disjunction. But this thing here doesn't meet the requirement because I can only have a conjunction of individual variables or negations of individual variables. I cannot have these smaller components. Okay? So what I need to do is now I have to expand it. What do you think I need to do to expand it? It's a part of the, I kind of explained that in the homework assignment already. B is okay. It's this junk here that is not okay. So how do I turn this whole thing into a D and F? Starts with a D. Yep, we just distribute, right? Okay. So CF is the common term, and then we have a disjunction here so that I want to distribute the terms of the disjunction over CF. So now it becomes B, not E, which is the first term, CF, which is on the outside, and then we have not B, E, and then we have CF on the outside. Are there any questions about this step? I just went from line 23, I focused on this component here, and I expanded using the distributive law to become this. It's not any different from what you do with arithmetic distributive law. It's just that in this case we are doing it with Boolean variables. Are there any questions about this step? No questions? Okay. So once we get to here, there's no longer a need to use the parentheses because B, not E, CF, they're all in one single conjunction. And then not B, E, CF, they're all in the other conjunction. Now it is in DNF. It is in disjunctive normal form. Because if I want to be a little bit more clear, I can put parentheses around the negation stuff. So when you look at this entire formula, okay, let me highlight which one. When you look at this entire formula, it is overall speaking a disjunction of something, right? That meets the first requirement of being a disjunctive normal form. When you look at each component of the disjunction, it is either a variable by itself, the negation of a variable by itself, or a conjunction of either variables or negation of a variable. Does it meet that requirement? Yeah, it does, right? I mean, the first term is variable B conjunction variable E. It's okay.
Second term, a little messier, but it still meets the requirement because B is a variable. That's cool. The negation of E is okay because I can have the negation of individual variables. I cannot have a negation of a conjunction. I cannot have the negation of a disjunction. But if it's a negation of a single variable as a part of a conjunction, it's not a problem. C is a variable, F is a variable, I'm good. And for the same reason, the last term is okay as well. So now, if this is actually going to be an output pin, I can now construct the gates to do it. Is that making any sense? So I'll just go ahead and do this one because it does not really apply to your homework assignment. Okay, so I'm going to start with the program, which is LogicSim. I have to start it this way because I'm using Linux. It doesn't have a shortcut to do it. If you install that LogicSim program in Windows, I think it does give you an icon you can double click. But you can always start it up this way as well in Windows. So this is LogicSim. I'm just going to pull an OR gate first and pull 3 conjunctions. Okay, so there's one, duplicate, another one, duplicate, another one. If you want to learn the actual interface, you can either go to the help screen, which has a tutorial, or you can watch the lab video from Tuesday, which I also explain how to use the basic interface of this software. There are 3 components, so I have no need to specify 5 here. So I go down from 5 input to 3 input. Okay, whether you want to use the narrow type or not is entirely up to you. Then I go back to the equation because I cannot remember everything. So when you look at the equation, we have B, C, E, F. Those are the 4 possible input pins. So now we switch back here, and then we specify the 4 input pins. So I'm going to move these things aside a little bit. I'm just going to specify 1, 2, 3, 4, and label these things. Okay, B, C, E, and F. All right. The output of this, okay, let me see whether I actually gave it a name in the notes. Well, in the notes, I did not really give it a name. It's basically the carry bit of bit 2, so I'll just call it C2, okay? So I'm going to call it C2, and remember, you do not have this as an output pin, okay? So duplicating this design and turning it in is going to receive a 0, because this has nothing to do with what you have to do with your homework assignment. It's related, but that's not what you need to do. Yep?
Okay, so since it's related, do we also need to have that formula with the...
Well, you are turning the formula into gates.
Okay.
That's what I'm trying to do next. Okay? Now, for those of you who think, hey, it really helps if I can see this equation in the gate logic design, that's good. Okay? Not a bad idea. Commenting is always a good idea. You can just copy this, Control-C, copy it from Notepad or whatever you want to use. Go to the LogicSim thing, click on the A, you can edit text in the circuit. You can just basically add comments, okay? Control-C, oh, that doesn't work. Darn it. It doesn't let me it doesn't let me paste into it. Okay, fine, I'll just type it. And,
So you're not really looking for the script. You're just trying to see if you put the logic gates in the proper.
I'm going to use the logic gates to do exactly what the formula is specifying. So right now I'm just going to say BE plus B not E CF plus not B E CF. Okay, because I just need the commenting. Otherwise, I need to go back and forth all the time, which is not going to be efficient. So now I have this. I don't need to go back and forth anymore. Now I just need to hook up the wires. Is that okay? Does everybody still kind of understand what I'm doing or what I'm trying to do? Okay. So I need to look at the first term first, which is BE. BE is B and E, only 2 inputs are required, so I have to reduce the number of inputs to just 2. Okay, I don't want to see any design with dangling inputs or outputs. Okay, that is not good, even though the design will quote unquote still work in the logic sim software, but in general, if you have dangling inputs, those inputs can float high or they can float low depending on the phase of the moon, the temperature, and all kinds of stuff like that. You don't want it in your processor, okay? So I want every single input to be connected to a pin, okay? So in this case, there are only 2 pins needed, it's B and E, okay? So we'll just go ahead and hook up B to one of them and E to the other one. There we go. All right, that finishes the BE. The next term is B, not E, C, F, okay? So I only need 4 inputs in this case. I'm gonna change the input from 5 to 4. 5 is the default. And B, non-negated, goes to the first one, okay? E goes to the second one, and it is negated. So I can just go here first.
Make a circle there.
Then I can make a circle by negating number 2. See, that's how I can negate it. You might want to do the negation first because otherwise, the pins don't really show correctly. So now I have to fix it. Ah, it doesn't let me do that.
Is there no Control Z?
Control Z is always useful.
We have
Yeah,
the
there's Control
technology.
Z, but I have to go all the way back. That's okay. So negate it first, and then finish the connection. There we go. All right. So not E is now done. C is the next one. And your design doesn't have to be artistically pleasing. So if you have wires running all over the place, it's okay as long as you can still read it. F is non-negated. Go into the last one. There we go. Okay, so that's the second term. Is that okay? Does everybody understand? The third term, well, by this time, I think you guys know already what to do. Negate the first one. Well, change the number of inputs because there are only 4 inputs in this case. Change this first one so it is negated. And the first one is negated B, so we just pull another wire from B, stick it here. The other 3 are non-negated, so the next one is E, so we just say E, go here. You don't really have to follow that order, but I just choose to do it that way so I can follow exactly the same equation here. C is the next one, C is this one. Oh, that's going to be ugly.
You can go farther up.
Yeah, I can do it that way. And here's F. F is the last one. I can pull it out of here. And then the output of these 3 conjunctions go to the input of the disjunction, which has 3 possible inputs. Okay, so, oh, I don't want to do that because I want to move it. If I can, I will try to make it look a little nice, okay, because otherwise it's going to be a little bit ugly. Here we go. Oops. Yeah. Here. There we go. All right. So the design should be done, except with this one, you don't want to specify tri-state, so turn off tri-state. I still have a problem because these wires should have colors. Okay, so we have a problem. Must have missed something. I'm just double checking everything because it should give me an output right now, but it's not. Output is yes, data bit is 1, tri-state is no pole behavior. That should work. And then the input pins, no tri-state, no pole behavior. That should work as well. Okay, if something like this happens, save it first. It's 3x3 adder dot, the extension part is automatic, so you can just save it here. Sometimes it happens, okay, so let me see if it is a problem with the software itself. And we'll go ahead and reload Now it works. So when you see something like that where it is not simulating, not giving you the correct output, save the file, close, reopen it. Okay, the program is a little bit buggy. The person who developed this, it's open source, so the guy never really got paid for doing this. And he stopped development in 2014. The source code is available, so if anyone in this class wants to pick it up and say, I cannot stand programs being buggy and you want to fix it, by all means, go ahead and pick it up and fix the software. But for the rest of you, just kind of remember that this is not entirely stable. If it does give you problems, just save the design, close, reopen. Usually that fixes the problem. Okay. All right. So that's basically what it is. So let's see whether it makes sense or not. Okay. So we go back to the picture of the 3-bit by 3-bit adder. How can I turn this to a 1? Well, maybe if B and E are both 1s, that should be a 1, right? Is that making any sense? Okay. So let's turn on both B and E in the simulator and see if it works. B and E are both 1s, and the output is a 1. Okay, that's good. That works. Let's see if there are any other ways to turn it into a 1. What about this one here? So we want this to be a 1, and we want this to be a 1 as well. That's another way to turn it into a 1. So that means I can make B a 1 and C and F both 1s. Okay, so B, C, F are all 1s, then this particular carry bit should still be a 1. So let's remember B, C, F. Okay, so B, C, F are all 1s, and this is a 1. So I just spot checked the design. This is by no means verification of the design, but I just pick certain cases to spot check it to make sure that it works as far as I can tell by test cases. Are there any questions about this design? Yep.
What?
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
So how is there 2 to the power of 4 test cases in this?
Well, when B is 0, C, E, F are all independent.
Oh, but those are test cases, but in order for it to be 1, there's actually a few, because that's the formula.
Well, you can work out how many cases would turn it into a 1, right?
Yeah.
How do you work that out?
Just look at it, I guess.
Well, you can always enumerate everything, right? You can say 0, 0 plus 0, 0. Okay? Quite obviously, in this case, the output would be a 0. The carry is going to be a 0. Okay, fine. 0, 1, 0, 1. Okay, you have this one being this is being a 1, but there's no carry to this bit here, which is what we are specifying, right? So that should be a 0. Then you have 0, 1, 1, 0. Okay, that should not give me any carry because the output is just 1, 1 with a carry of 0. You can have 1, 1 here and a 1 here. Okay, that's the one that we checked. Because this 1 plus 1 will give me a 0 and a carry. This 1 plus 0 will give me a 1, but that 1 added to this carry will give me a 0 with an extra carry. So there are ways to enumerate all the possible cases, and then you can actually check every single test case. Is that making sense? Okay, very good. Yep.
So this right here is just a carry function for the 3rd bit.
Correct. This is the carry for this particular bit, which is not the final output of a 3-bit by 3-bit adder.
So for our homework, would we have 3 outputs?
No, you have 4 outputs because you have the results of each column, right? This is one output, this is one output, this is one output, and this is the dangling carry of the most significant bit, and that has to be an output as well. That's why you have 4 outputs. Yep.
So like the one that we're gonna have to like is the one that's gonna be most relevant to us to convert to its disjunctive form, that x plus y plus carry specifically for our program or not?
Can you ask the question again?
Well, I mean, like, well, because like, I was just thinking, for the purposes of our upcoming one, like, is the X and Y and carry the one we're gonna try to focus on working out ourselves, or?
Okay, for your homework assignment, the first thing you want to do is to say there's no A, no B, no C. This is now x2, this is now x1, this is now x0. This is now y2, y1, y0. Okay? Because the homework assignment specifically want you to label the pins based on the bit position and which number it belongs to. So you don't want to use A, B, C, D, E, F to label your input pins. You want to use Y0, Y1, Y2, X0, X1, X2 to label your pins. Is that okay? Your outputs will be this. This is your first output pin, which is Z0. It's the least significant bit of the sum. This is your Z1, which is your second least significant bit of the sum. This is going to be Z2, which is the most significant bit of your sum. And this is going to be C, which is the overall carry of the entire 3x3 adder. So you have to label your pins, based on the homework description, even though the binary add reading material has just about everything spelled out. The only tricky part, the only part where you are going to spend time on is to turn something like this into DNF. And this one is kind of nasty because it has an exclusive OR inside another exclusive OR. So I'm going to show you guys how to do that. Okay, just so that we got all the ground, all the bases covered. So let's go ahead and do this part here, where we have a exclusive OR applied to another exclusive OR in the inside. So we got this AB, and we'll make this even worse. We'll make this AB and then CD like so. Okay. Because I want to show you guys how to do this. Okay, remember what is R? R is just exclusive OR. Okay, so in this case, what we want to do is to say, okay, this is RAB times the negation of RCD plus the negation of RAB times the non-negative version of RCD. That's the first step. I'm just taking care of the outermost R in this case. Is that okay? Because I want to make sure that everybody understands how I got from line 29 to line 30. I'm just taking care of the outermost R by applying the quote-unquote exclusive OR to the components inside. Any questions? Yep.
What is the exclusive OR?
Huh?
What do you mean by exclusive OR?
This is really doing exclusive OR because it's taking the first component, taking the second component, but doing the negation. Okay, this is going back to what we talked about in the previous class. I'm not sure whether you guys remember this. Okay, A exclusive OR B can be written as A not B or not A B. That's what we're doing. Okay. All right. So in the next step, I'm going to expand the RAB and the RCD inside. So now we have, okay, this becomes A not B plus not AB. That's the first one. And we have the actual and with the negation of C not D or not CD. And then the second component, I'm just going to leave it the way it is. Okay, I'm going to focus on the first one. So I leave the second one just the way it is. Are there any questions about how I got from line 31 to line 32? I expanded the R's into the negation, conjunction, and disjunctive. Is that okay? Yes? Sort of? It is tedious, okay? I'm not saying that this is not tedious, it's simple, but it is tedious. Okay. So the next thing we want to do is to look at this thing and say, wow, this is not even close to DNF. How do I turn this into DNF? Well, what do? First of all, we have to take care of the negation, because this negation applies to a disjunction. So we have to take care of that first. How do we take care of a negation that is applied to a disjunction? De Morgan's law, okay? Exactly, we apply De Morgan's law. So we apply De Morgan's law to only that portion, which means we copy and paste this portion. It doesn't change, but we do want to apply De Morgan's law to exactly just that portion. Is that okay? De Morgan's law basically says, if you have a negation applied to disjunction, you can distribute the negation to the individual terms in the inside, but then you have to turn the disjunction into a conjunction. So I'm going to repeat De Morgan's law here for this particular case. So the negation of A or B, which is the form that we have at this point, is the same thing as not A and not B. Is that okay? So we'll go ahead and apply exactly that. So we have the negation of C not D times the negation of just not CD. Not C and then the D. And then we close, okay, that close, we'll close that one. Okay, so then the rest should still be okay. Copy, paste, there we go. I just want to point out what is the transition from line 33 to line 34. Line 33 has this thing here, which is a negation applied to a disjunction. I use De Morgan's law, so it turned into the negation to each individual term, and then those two terms are now connected by a conjunction. Any questions? Is that okay? And now we have a new problem. The new problem that we have is now we have a disjunction applied to conjunction. So how do we take care of that? We have to use De Morgan's law again, okay? In other words, I'll just focus on one, okay? We take a look at this guy here, because this is the negation of C conjunction not D. We don't want that, okay? Because it is a disjunction not it's a negation not applied to an individual variable, but to a conjunction. So now we have to use the other part of De Morgan's law. De Morgan's law also say that if you have a negation of a conjunction, you can turn it into the negation of the first term, and then use a disjunction to connect it to the negation of the second term. That is the other part of De Morgan's law, and that's what we're going to use here. All right, so now I'm going to just copy and paste, and we take care of just this term. Okay, that's all we're going to do. Remember, don't try to do too many steps into one. Okay, you just do one step at a time, because if you make a mistake, it's easier to catch it like this. Okay. So this becomes the negation of C. I just lost track of my own thought. Plus the negation of D. That's it. Okay. Let me just focus on what I just did. Okay. This is the negation of a conjunction. It turns into the negation of the first term, the negation of the second term, connected by a disjunction. Is that okay? I left the negation of a negation on it intentionally because I want you to see that the second negation is because of the application of De Morgan's law. Is that okay? All right. So I'm going to clean this up just a little bit. Okay, clean it up a little bit. The first thing I can do to clean it up is to say, hey, double negation is useless. There we go. Now I can copy and paste this line to take care of the other case of this. right? Because this is also a negation applied to conjunction. So I have to apply the Morgan's law again. So this becomes not C, because the negation is distributed to the negation of C, and then we have a disjunction of the negation of D. In other words, from line 37, we went from here to here. I'm guessing the recording of this class will be played several times.
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You're gonna get a hit.
It was like 30, 32, 29, 400.
Yeah.
Your views
Become
going.
famous.
Viral.
The good time.
But you can see that it's tedium, okay? For the most part, this is just tedium. You just have to be careful going from one step to the next. All right, what about the next step? Oh, look at this huge mess here. Well, it is a huge mess, but it's in a way not too bad, okay? So I'm gonna do some cleaning up, and then we'll actually go ahead and do this, okay? So let's go ahead and clean it up first, okay? And this is the way I do it. You know, I don't skip steps. Okay, I hate skipping steps because it just gives me that feeling of, oh, maybe I missed something. Okay. All right. So look at line 39, and we just focus on the big old mess on the left hand side. Forget about the right hand side for now. The left hand side is now something plus something, and then something times something. Okay. It's actually not too bad. Okay? It's not too bad because now we can just use distributed law to expand everything. Okay? So what I'll do is I'm going to expand, well, let's pick something to expand first. Let's expand this part first. Let's expand this part. Okay? If I expand just that part, what do I get? Okay, so we can do it step by step. Okay, it's just like when you have this expression in arithmetic. Okay, if you have A plus B times C plus D, you can do it in one single step. You can also separate it into two individual steps, because you can look at C plus D as one single term, and then you just say, okay, now we have A, and then C plus D as one term, plus B, and then C plus D as one term. Right? Then you look at each one and you say, oh, this is AC plus AD. This is BC plus BD. Right? You separate it into two steps. That's what I'll do. So we look at this thing here and we separate it into two different steps. And the first step is to leave the second part intact on its own. So we have C plus not D as one part, and C plus not D as one part. So that's the first step. In other words, what I just did is to go from here to here. I think I got 1, 2, okay, there we go. One more, close parentheses. Are there any questions about this step? Then I can just go ahead and finish it, right? Because now I can just take a look at this and expand what I did not expand the first time. So now we have C not CC plus C not D. Then we have DC plus D not D. There we go. Yeah, that looks right to me. Now we can do some simplifications. Okay, let me check out all the unnecessary parentheses, and then we'll do some simplification. Okay, let's just take a look at this thing here, and I'll let you guys tell me why you think some of these terms do not seem to make a whole lot of sense. I think I missed one negation. Sorry, I did miss one. Yeah, I think I missed this negation here because it's supposed to be the not C applied to not D, so this negation has to be there. Okay, but looking at these four individual terms, tell me which two terms do not make sense.
And then what should we do about
Not
it?
C and C and D.
Yeah, not C and C.
Not C and C, hey, that doesn't seem to make sense. Not D and not D doesn't seem to make sense either. What do those terms become? Zero, because they are false all the time. Okay, it doesn't matter what C is, because if C is true, then not C is false. If D is true, then not D is false, right? So, doesn't matter what it is, they all become zeros. Okay, so I am really doing this, step by step. Okay, so I'm turning this into a false. I'm turning this also into a false. Now I look at this. Is there a way to simplify? Disjunction with false, does it do anything?
No.
Doesn't do a single thing, because just like in addition, you can add 0 as many times as you want to a value. It doesn't change it. It's the same thing here. If you use disjunction and you disjunction with false, it doesn't do it. Doesn't do anything at all. So I can just get rid of all the zeros. Okay, so now we get rid of that 0. We get rid of, oh, I accidentally got one more, and we get rid of that 0. Now it looks a little bit cleaner on that side. Okay? Then what do? A not B, not C, not D becomes one term. A not B, DC becomes another term. Not A, B, not C, not D becomes another term. Not A, B, DC becomes the last term. Well, I just did everything in my head, despite what I said earlier, one step at a time. But this one, you can kind of see it because, on one side you have basically something plus something times something plus something. So you can just apply the pattern that is already here because it's just a cross product. So now we can now rewrite this whole thing as A not B not C not D plus A not B DC plus not AB not C not D plus not AB DC. Is that okay? Now do the same thing to the other side. But you can see that it's really kind of the same thing. What is the difference between those two sides? It's just a simple thing, right? So if you're really good with any type of editor and you know how to do a search and replace, you can take care of the other side, just like that.
Regex.
Or if you're really good with VI, you can use one command in VI to do it. But your assignment doesn't have anything quite that nasty, okay? Something like that, yes, but something nastier than that, no. Because the nastiest term that you have in your homework assignment is this term here. Well, I guess you do have something that's kind of nasty because this entire thing is the second argument to the R. So you have to figure out this whole thing first and then apply the R to it. And you might think that this is the nastiest one, because this one does look kind of nasty, but it's not. Because when you look at the highlighted formula, we never apply anything other than just individual variables to R. So once you expand it, it's not too bad. It is only bad when you have an R something inside an R something. Like this one. This one has an R inside another R. And then the second argument to R has R inside a C, and then there's an OR outside. But the approach is the same. Okay, so remember those. Once again, how many rules did I use to do all that stuff? Okay, how many rules did I use?
3.
3. Okay, one is called the distributive rule. The second one, well, the second and the third are the same because they're all De Morgan's law. Okay. Are there any questions?
So many.
Well, I have a question. Okay, if I want to check along each step,
and see if I made a mistake. How can I do that?
Email you.
Huh?
Pray to RN Jesus.
Email you.
Email me. I'll just go back to you and say, you know,
Did you
check
watch
it
the
yourself.
video?
I'm not doing your homework assignment. But how do you do it? Seriously, how do you check something like this?
You have to check it line by line.
You have to check it line by line, every single test case. Yep.
Plug it in and see which pin will work.
Exactly. Now, how many of you know how to write programs in C and C++? Well, then do it. Okay, because that really is the thing to do, okay? Do it in C and C++, okay? Now, if I tell you that A, B, C, D, okay, let's see how we can do it in C and C++. All right. How many test cases again do we have? 64 test cases, right? So to each output, there are 64 test cases. Are you going to hand enter all 64 test cases?
No, when I ask my classmate to help me.
No, you write a program to generate the 64 test cases. How do you write a program to generate all 64 combinations of zeros and ones? 6 bits, zeros and ones.
For loops.
An array.
You can do loops, you can do recursion, you can do a whole bunch of stuff. Okay, so it's up to you. But it's not difficult to write a program to spill out 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 1, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 1, 1, and so on. Okay, you can enumerate all 64 possible input cases using a fairly simple program. In fact, I'm not going to use a loop. I would just use a loop to go from 0 to 63, and then for each number, I spill out individual bits. That's it. Because if you look at the number, between 0 to 63, the bit pattern representing that number is the pattern that you need to test this particular design. Is that okay? Okay, let me see. Let me check your proficiency in C. This is not even C++. Has nothing object-oriented in it at all. Okay, let me just see how much you guys remember about C programming. Okay, I'll just call this generate.c. It generates all the test cases. I'm going to cheat a little bit and use printf. Okay, because main int I for I equals 0, I is less than 64 plus I. And don't forget to return 0 so that the compiler doesn't bark at me. Okay, 64 test cases. Each row, which is representing one test case, how do we do that for each row?
So aren't you supposed to have like a certain amount of inputs?
Okay, what about this? Okay, if you are going to use this approach to test your formula, there's another way to do it, which is, I think, a little bit easier. Okay, I and j. I is x, j is y. Well, okay, fine. X, y. How about that? Okay, they're corresponding to the actual input label of your program. So I'm going to say x, which is a 3-bit number, is going to go from 0 to, as a 3-bit number, what is the range of values? 0 to 7, very good. So now we have for y equal to 0, y is less than 7 because y is also a 3-bit number, right? So now I have every single combination between the values of x and the value of y. Is that okay? Whatever I do here is going to test every single test case. Is that okay? Question? Okay. So the first thing I want to do is to say, okay, I just want to know the correct answer of all the output pins first. Okay, seems to make sense, right? Because if you want to work on the equations, you might want to know, okay, what is the correct answer for this test case? What is the correct answer for that test case? And so on. Is that okay? All right. So what am I going to do? I can probably use a single printf, okay? So the printf is going to say the overall carry is something. Z2, which is the most significant bit of the sum, is something. Z1 is something. Z0 is something. Line feet. Okay, so I have multiple lines to do this. Okay. Next question is, what is the carry? I'll give you a shortcut first. Z is x plus y. Right? Because after all, this is what we want to do. This is supposed to be a 3-bit by 3-bit adder. I just cheated and used the add operator in C++ to give me the correct answer to begin with. Now I have to look at this answer and extract each and every single bit and say that, okay, out of your design, this is supposed to be the output. So how do I get the quote-unquote carry bit out of the sum of x and y? Sorry? Modulus. You're close. How many people remember bitwise operators? Yes?
That's what I was going to say. You could use a bitwise or to mask off. And then
Exactly. But which bit are we going to mask in this case? I'm only talking about the carry bit in this case. The carry bit actually corresponds to bit 3, right? So how about we say Z bitwise and bit 3, but that's going to give me a large number because it's going to give me 0 or 8. So then I can say, if that is non-zero, give me a 1. If it is a 0, give me a 0. That is the carry. Is that okay? 1 less than 3, what does that do? It shifts to the left 3 times, right? But which pattern am I shifting to the left? 1, right? So 1 itself is bit 0. Shifting once becomes bit 1. Shifting twice becomes bit 2. Shifting 3 times becomes bit 3. If your numbers, the numbers that we are adding, can only have ones for the least significant 3 bits, this is the carry. This is the overall carry of the addition. Is that okay? Next question, how do we get to bit 3, bit 2 of the sum? If you see me doing this, you already know that there's only one thing, or very few things that will change in this case. What am I going to change to extract bit 2 of the sum?
how far you shift?
Shift 2, right? Bit 1, bit 0. Yes, I know it is redundant, but it shows the pattern. Is that okay? And of course, it doesn't need that comma anymore because it is the 4th item in the test case. So this program right now is going to give you all 64 possible inputs, and for each one, it tells you what your program is supposed to output. Is that making any sense? It doesn't really print x and y, okay? If you want that, you can add some additional code to do it, okay? Which is going to be very similar to what we see here, except instead of z, you have x, y, okay? And you don't have a bit 4. You don't have a bit 3 to deal with, because all the inputs go from 0, 1, 2 only. Okay, so let's check this and see if it works, okay? And instead of printing x and y as binary numbers, I'm going to print those as just regular integers. So I'm going to say x equals to some integer, y equals to some integer, and they are just by themselves. They're not going to be printed in binary whatsoever, just base 10. Okay. So let's go ahead and see if we can get this to work. Want to turn on debugging. Output is gen.c. expected, okay, line 15, that's a problem.
You just have an X comma Y comma.
No, that's,
There's no end parenthesis for printf.
no, there's one here.
Oh. Need new glasses.
What am I missing? Okay, let's read the message again. Okay, it says on line 13, okay, this is line 13, expected close paren before X on line 13. Okay, so let's do it again, line 13. I miss a comma after the string, that's it. That's what it's missing. Okay. Run the program, and that's the output. Okay, does it make sense? Okay, because before you say, oh, this is why this is correct. Well, it doesn't make sense at all. Well, it makes sense for the most part, but it's missing some test cases. You can see X and Y never got to 7 because
Off by 1.
it's off by 1. Okay, well, that's an easy problem to fix.
Your increment is pre-testing.
Sorry?
Just switch the increments. Right now you've got plus plus x, but if you make it x plus plus,
Either way, it's okay. That part doesn't matter, because the result of the auto increment was never utilized by anyone. So the side effect of increasing by 1 is still okay. So it doesn't matter whether you use plus plus x or x plus plus, because nobody is actually using the result of the auto increment operator. Okay, but I did specify the range incorrectly. So now we recompile, rerun the program, and now it goes to 7. Let's just check the last test case. 7 plus 7. Does it make sense that the end result is there's a carry overall, and then the other 3 bits are 1, 1, and 0? Makes perfect sense. If you just carry out the addition by paper, okay, 1, 1, 1 plus 1, 1, 1 in binary, okay, and I'm going to specify carry on one individual row. There's a 0 here because there are no less significant digits, so that 0 is always there. 1 plus 1 is a 0 with a carry. 0 plus 0 is a 0. 1 plus 1 is a 0. 0 with a carry. 0 plus 1 is a 1. 1 plus 1 is a 0 with a carry. 0 plus 1 is a 1. That's your C, Z2, Z1, Z0. And that's what we have. Is that okay? Now, how does that have anything to do with testing your formula? Every time you derive the formula, you plug it in and see if your formula comes up with exactly the same value as what this program is printing. Okay? All right, give you an example. Let's say we are dealing with this guy here. Okay? So we're dealing with this guy and go like, I'm working on the equation, I'm expanding this equation. I don't know whether I'm getting the right result or not. Okay? So you plug in whatever formula that you have entered up to this point, and then in the program, for each case, you test whether the output of your equation matches the bit that is computed by the program itself. If it matches for all 64 test cases, you're good. If you miss 1 or 2 test cases, or if you miss any of the test cases, then something is not right. Okay, your formula does not match the equation. Okay, so how do you get started with this? This is stuff that may be useful at work, okay? Because that's how you need to test programs. The first thing I'm going to do is I will define R. Okay, what do I do? What should R return? It should be X exclusive or Y, right? Now, what if I tell you that X can either be 0 or 1, Y can either be 0 or 1? Then what can I do to shortcut this whole thing? There is an exclusive OR operator in C and C++, except it is a bitwise operator. But if I'm guaranteed that x is either a 1 or a 0, y is also a 1 or 0, I can just use the bitwise operator. There's nothing wrong with using the bitwise operator if that part can be guaranteed. What does it look like in C, the bitwise operator of exclusive OR? A caret, very good. So we just say x exclusive of y, that's R. Well, I can do the same thing with C, right? C is x bitwise or and bitwise and y, because once again, if x, y are both guaranteed to be either a 0 or 1, bitwise and is going to be exactly what I want. Is that part okay? So now that you have R and C, and you can get to individual bits of x, y, you can just plug in the same equations. Is that okay? Now, if you want to extract the individual bits of x0, y0, x1, y1, and so on, I'll give you one example. Okay, how do I get to x1? As a single bit, it can either be a 0 or 1. What do I put here as bit 1 of the value x, which is already a variable here? This is a new variable, only responsible to be one single bit of x. You don't have to do it. You have seen all the operators that are needed to get this to work. So what is the expression to get to bit 1 of the variable x in this case? And I want it to be either a 0 or 1. Go ahead.
R parentheses xy.
Perhaps showing that part of the program helps. It's the same thing. It is x bitwise and mask out bit 1, right? If that turns out to be non-zero, give me a 1. If that turns out to be a 0, just give me a 0. That is how you extract bit 1 of x. How do you extract bit 2 of x? Same thing, except it applies to the second, to bit 2. So now you have a way to extract everything as individual bits. x0, x1, x2, y0, y1, y2. You have your R and C defined as functions, right? So now you can do it step by step. Every time you derive your formula, a little bit, plugging in. Then you plug in again, plugging in again. Because if you work with x1 like this, which is a single bit, a 0 or 1, all the bitwise operators will work just fine. Except for negation. Because negation negates all the bits. But this is how you can test your formula step by step. Because I can see this being the biggest problem. Is you keep deriving, because the derivation itself is fairly mechanical, it's not a big deal. But you can make mistakes along the way. If you make a mistake, not realize that you have made a mistake earlier on, and you use that and keep going, then the entire thing is useless. Okay, you just wasted your time. On the other hand, if you derive it a few steps, you check first, everything is still okay, then you keep going, then you're not going to waste your time. Is that okay? It will be time consuming, so you have to get a head start on this one. You have 1 week to do this, okay? The nice thing about this is you can focus on one output at a time. There's no need to work on all of them at the same time. You can just focus on one, get it done, move on to the next one. And if you only have time to go through half of the derivation, it's okay. Verify that your partially derived formula is correct. You just leave it as is until you have time to work on it again. But the key is verification. Okay, every step or every few steps of the derivation, check it again. Okay, you just do not accumulate a whole bunch of derivations and then you go like, okay, this is the final result. I am going to test this. Then it's going to be surprising because there's a lot of room for error in this case. Just mechanical error. Okay, just copy it wrong. I did it a few times, right? I forgot the negation. Are there any questions? No questions, or are you guys just really, really tired?
Probably some combination of the both.
A combination of both. Okay, so what I'll do is we are running out of time in the lecture. Okay, what I'll do is I'm going to the lab. You guys can, have food. I know you guys have food. Get caffeinated, and if you want to get a head start and just want to work on this, I will be in the lab. If you have any questions, I will try to answer those questions. If not, you can go home, get a good night's sleep, and then start tomorrow. Okay? But do not start any later than tomorrow, because this will take time, especially because you need to test, a few tests along the way.
Yeah, so like you can just do like
I just have another hour and a half to go,
And home free.
and I'm home free. Then I have my kids to supervise.
Bits by bits? What the hell?
We don't need to submit these, like,
No, this you don't have to submit.
okay.
So what you do?
All we need to submit is the .crs file.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. So that's the only thing you have to submit. But to get to the final design, it takes all of these steps. So this is basically a tool to help you double check your derivation.
So we're converting from like procedure to DNF to circuit.
Right, but as you are going through the process, this helps you, spot problems. Because if you miss something minor in a step, then your output pin, calculated output pin value is not going to be the same as what it is supposed to be. Then if you can catch it early on, then you're saving yourself a lot of time, because you're not going to say, oh, I have, you continue with all this derivation, but the end result is going to be wrong. Then you don't know which step you got wrong, and you just wasted a whole lot of time. But on the other hand, if you go through like 3 steps of derivation, you plug it in, you check everything, then you have the confidence to move on and know, oh, okay, I know everything up to this point is 100% correct. So that's basically what this is for, is a tool so that you can test your derivation step by step, or as frequently or infrequently as you want.
So when you say that the circuitry only has to have 2 levels on
Yes.
it, what does that exactly does that mean?
Not allowed to have more than.
That means it has to look
I
like
know what less than means.
each output pin is the output of an OR gate. Each input of the OR gate comes out of a AND gate.
Okay.
But you cannot have any additional gates beyond this. So that's why you only have 2 layers of gates. AND gates, a single OR gate outlet.
Okay.
But you can have any number of input to the AND gates or the OR gates. You can also use the bubble to negate as necessary. But the negation only applies to individual inputs. And that's why it maps to DNF, because DNF is exactly like that, except we don't call those pins, we call those variables.
Wait, did you say 1 output pin?
This is for 1 single output bit. You have 4 in the
Okay.
homework
So we
assignment.
should have 4 output pins, but only 1 OR?
No.
Or each output
each
gets
output
1.
pin gets an OR.
1 OR per output.
If it doesn't need an OR, that's okay. Okay, it's not a problem. The limitation is 2 layers of gates. So for the very simple ones, maybe it's really not too much, not too bad.
So by layers of gates, you mean that an AND can't feed into another AND. It can only feed into an OR, which will feed into an output.
If it still works out, it's okay, but you can only have 2 layers of gates. In other words, if you count backwards from the output pin back to the input pin,
Okay.
it cannot go through more than 2 gates.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Yes.
Yep.
What are your office hours again?
It's listed in the syllabus on, well, this is
Oh, I
why
can share
it is in
it.
the syllabus, because even I cannot remember.
I believe it's Tuesday, Thursday. It's before class for about
Before
an hour or so.
4:40, which is from 4:30 to 5:30.
5:30
On Monday, Wednesday, Friday, it's 8 to 9
in
a.m.
the morning. Okay, and it's in the syllabus, right?
It is in the syllabus.
It also
So
says
they're-
4:30 to 6:30 on Tuesday, Thursday.